markets were a little jittery. You have issued an explanation as far as the tax residency certificate issue was concerned. Do you think it cleared the air?
Well, I think markets were jittery yesterday because they perhaps misunderstood the meaning of a clause. And I can understand why they may have misunderstood. I think it was rather clumsily worded. They just lifted last year's paragraph from the memorandum to the finance bill and put it in the sections. It has not become law yet. It's a bill. So when I read that clause again, I said it's clumsily worded, but we'll clarify. The tax residency certificate is evidence of a person's resident status. Certainly, the department cannot go behind that.
Sure.
And as far as other conditions are required under different PTAAs, for other kinds of taxable transactions, those conditions will apply. As far as residency is concerned, the TRC is conclusive evidence.
Mr. Chidambaram, as far as I could see, the reason why a number of people got very worried is that there are some people who have been misusing the Mauritius thing. They are not, in fact, residents out there. They're using a resident as their agent to try and get through the Mauritius loophole to escape tax in India. I mean, is there any difficulty in saying to the extent that people are misusing this, we will go after them?
See, that's a larger question involving the government of Mauritius. For the last about 7 or 8 years, we are in discussions with the government of Mauritius to revise the treaty. And unless we revise the treaty, I don't think we should do anything unilaterally. And therefore, this clause was not intended to revise the treaty unilaterally. That is an ongoing discussion. And that discussion will lead us to some conclusion.
There is, however, the fact that the well-laid-out benefit clause hasn't really been spelled out. And most people believe that whoever wants to implement GAR, it may be your government, it may be another government 2 years later, there will allegations be raised that there is lack of certainty all over again.
No, this is a very different issue. The GAR provisions are being introduced in the bill to amend the existing GAR provisions, Chapter 10A. That will be debated in Parliament. And that will become law when Parliament passes the finance bill. And that will come into operation on 1/4/2016. So GAR is not an issue today. What Swami is talking about is the TRC.
But even the benefit clause, sir, I think there is a lot of angst and there's a lot of anxiousness around that. Most people believe that your statement that you put out today doesn't really address the beneficial ownership clause.
The statement put out today has nothing to do with GAR. The statement put out today by the CBDT addresses the issue of the status of a tax resident certificate.
You started by saying that you were not happy with the language. It was clumsy. From a man as meticulous as you and who looks into such detail, I mean, I'm a little surprised that this could actually go in. Are you, on hindsight, I do not know if that's the right word to use, are you upset about the wording?
No, I understand it correctly, as I think it's correctly. But if someone understands it differently, since two people understand the same clause differently, the mildest word I can use is clumsy, but plain reading, to me, it's quite clear.
All right, sir.
Let me take you to the macroeconomics issue. This budget clearly is aiming to stimulate growth and check inflation. Now, we find that the budget figures say we are projecting a nominal GDP growth of 13.4%.
Yes.
Now, if you take about 6.4% as being real growth, that is as high as 7% inflation.
Right.
I'll
tell you the number.
Yes.
6.5% growth, 6.5% inflation. The way we arrive at GDP is 1.065 multiplied by 1.065, and you will get 13.4.
Even
That's arithmetic.
Even 6.5 inflation. I mean, your last figure that came in on the wholesale price index, it was already down to that level. And Raghuram Rajan's economic survey seemed to point that, there is a downward trend. So a lot of people said, surely it has to get lower than that.
Well, if it gets lower than that, then perhaps the growth number will go up a bit. we want inflation to come lower, but we have to be realistic. There is a drought situation in Maharashtra, a very bad drought situation in Maharashtra. I think until we cross the monsoon, we really cannot say what the situation will be like on the inflation front. The Rabi has to come in, the monsoon has to be good, promising a good kharif, and then I think we can sit back and say, well, inflation has been finally tamed. So I think they are assuming rather conservative numbers as far as inflation is concerned. But if inflation does come down, I'll be very happy. But if inflation comes down, I hope that growth will also pick up. So eventually we might end up with the same 13.4.
Okay, you said there have been some drought conditions in Maharashtra, but that's this fiscal year. Coming fiscal year, there is still one more Kharif and one more Rabi before the election. Assuming both those are normal, assuming that there is no drought, would you not expect inflation to come down?
Well, I don't know how you count Rabi and Kharif.
Kharif is
this Rabi, I counted only in April.
Okay. But even then,
the next Rabi is into the next financial year.
But I still want to ask you, while Swami is debating on the growth rate, 4.5% is what you've got in Q3. I know you believe things can turn around in the fourth quarter. 6.5%, many believe is being ambitious. You believe you can end up higher than that because you're really working with provisions of 5% growth for this fiscal. Do you think enough has been done in this budget to achieve the 6.5%? You could perhaps end up higher. And also just from a economic buoyancy point of view, your budget mathematics hinges on the fact that you will get to that growth figure, and you risk much if you do not.
All budget mathematics are premised on some growth figure. We have taken 13.4 for nominal GDP growth, and I think we will be there. But if we do better, that's good. If we do slightly worse than that, then we'll have to think of other ways to boost growth. But I think we will do 13.4.
The Q3 figure has come out at 4.5%, which to some people is a disappointment. On the other hand, if you look at the CSO projection of 5.0% for the year, it's bang on, it should have been expected.
So some people actually the Q3 figure is derived from the 5.
Okay.
So it's not based on any new data.
The two are consistent with each other, yes. But there are some people who are arguing that this shows that the economy has not bottomed out. Therefore, 6.5% is an unrealistic jump. Other optimists would say, on the other hand, because the base has now become so low, 6.5 actually becomes much easier on the lower base. Of these two projections, which do you think is the better way of looking at it?
Or could you actually end higher?
I can only go by my chief economic advisor. And I can then rely upon the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Both have projected a growth rate of slightly over 6%. And between 6.1 and 6.7, the average is 6.4.
You spoke about growth and you said that the government alone cannot walk the talk on growth. You do need monetary policy to support it. Given the fiscal consolidation map that you've put in and efforts that have been made or reforms that have been introduced in the run-up to the budget, do you think enough has been done to actually see an aggressive RBI policy from here on, at least on rate cuts?
Well, we'll have to see at the next round of monetary policy review. I'm sure that the governor has taken note of all that I have said in the budget speech, all that we have done in terms of budgeting, the fact that we have contained fiscal deficit to 5.2, and the fact that I'm pretty confident I'll be able to contain fiscal deficit to below 4.8 next year. I'm sure all this will weigh with the Monetary Policy Advisory Committee, by whom the governor seems to set store, and the governor will take the right decision.
But also people who sometimes override. Just a quick question before I throw it back to Swami. You said that you will hope that the governor has listened to your speech carefully. Will a 6.5% be possible without the governor buying your point of view and actually cutting rates aggressively?
Well, I'll answer it this way. A reduction in interest rates will certainly help get us to 6.5%.
There were people who said, look, we're in a time of fiscal consolidation, and yet we see the overall spending is up by 16% in the budget. In other words, the budget spending to even nominal GDP is going up instead of coming down. So So there were some people who were looking for some shrinkage and said, you guys are not being tough enough. What's your reaction to that?
That's not right. Last year, the budget estimate for the plan was 5,21,000 crore. And this year, we've increased it to 5,55,322 crore. If you look upon BE upon BE, this is a modest increase. Obviously, I cannot set a BE for 2013-14 less than the BE of 2012-13. Therefore, 5,55,322 crore is a realistic and a necessary plan size. If you look at total expenditure, much of the non-plan is committed. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to pay salaries, you have to pay for your defense, you have to pay for your paramilitary, you have to pay interest charges, you have to pay pensions. Much of it is committed. So all that a finance minister can do there is to look at the size of the non-plan envelope and say, well, let me find the resources to meet it. That's what we're doing.
Why not resources? What are your big revenue mobilization schemes? I don't think the government is staring at or looking at a one-off like a 3G auction. The 2G, it seems to suggest spectrum is no longer as valued a resource as it used to be, but you still budget for 40,000 crore rupees. What are going to be your big revenue schemes?
I have a statement in writing from the DOT how they're going to give me that amount. It includes one-time fee. It includes fees for the excess revenues, which is consequent upon the Supreme Court judgment. It includes the annual payments they will make on the licenses they bid, and they'll have to make it over the next 10 years. So it's broken down into various components, and they've given me that number. So I'll hold them to that number. See, last time, the 40,000 was put in there without any analysis. Just the number was put in there.
Right.
This time I've got it broken down to the last digit. So I'll hold them to that number, and I will try to get that revenue.
I do hope you can hold Mr. Kapil Sibal to that number, but I still have two questions on that. A, much of it is going to be under litigation. It already is. One-time fee, there's been a stay on the court. Refarming is also being contested by the telco. So A, much is under litigation. The second point is that we've seen two spectrum auctions and the kind of response it has evoked. It doesn't seem to be a valued resource.
That part has been factored in the statement, that these auctions are not likely to get us the money soon or at all. But litigation may not be bad for me. If the matter goes to court, and say the highest court, it's quite likely I will get the money quicker. So I don't think you need to come to the conclusion that litigation will mean delay in payment. Litigation might actually accelerate the payment.
That's the lawyer in you talking. Before I take it to Swami, I have one question to ask you on litigation. You are trying to talk out and settle the matter with Vodafone. Many people thought that your budget will at least make a reference to the retrospective tax amendment that was made in the budget last year. You've chosen to stay silent on it.
Because there's nothing to say at the moment. On the retrospective taxation, all that the Shom Committee said was, government should, as far as possible, avoid retrospective taxation. But if you are obliged to make a law retrospectively and collect the tax alone and waive the penalty and interest, which as a principle is unexceptionable.
But this is a rare case as well.
This has nothing to do with resolving the Vodafone issue. The Vodafone issue has been settled by Parliament. Vodafone wants to reopen that through arbitration. We rejected arbitration. So Vodafone is now offered conciliation. The matter will go to the cabinet. Conciliation is non-binding. So once the Vodafone issue is resolved, and that is put behind us, then we can always move the amendments necessary to reflect the Shom Committee recommendation.
How hopeful are you of smoking the peace pipe with Vodafone? From arbitration, they've come down to conciliation. Nobody wants to fight with the government.
I have said quite a number of times that I want the issue resolved and put behind us. And I've told Vodafone when they met me, I want it resolved. If you want it resolved, let's find a way out. I think they will find a way out.
Are you willing to settle for lower finances from the transaction?
You're not a conciliator.
Okay. All right.
Fiscal consolidation. There's still some questions that, the kind of measures that you're bringing about. You've got your numbers, the 5.2 and 4.8. But they say, how sustainable is this? There is a worry that many of the things that you're doing are one-off measures which will last for just a year and then they disappear. Even your surcharge on income tax and corporate taxes for a year, spectrum, the disinvestment, there's a very high dividend from the RBI, which looks like...
Actually, there's an argument that the RBI can give us more.
I see. Can you just give the argument?
The argument is RBI has a very large income. It puts it away in many reserves wisely. But surely they have the capacity to pay us more by way of dividend. And this number is not a unilaterally fixed number. It's a number agreed upon between the government and the RBI. So nothing surprising about this number.
Profits are usually high when they have monetized the deficit. When they're holding large number of government bonds. On the one hand, you pay them money in the form of interest, and then they give it back to you in the form of dividends, but it's not really extra money.
Whatever it is available with the RBI as RBI's surpluses. And RBI surpluses can only be shared with the government. Otherwise, it goes to build RBI's reserves. Therefore, we talk to the governor and we agree upon a number. This is an agreed number. And on the larger question, I have looked at these numbers every day for the last 2 months. You have looked at it with greater insight than I can bring over the last 24 hours. So why should you think that I cannot defend these numbers? I can defend these numbers. You raise any number and I'll defend it.
No, I'm saying the sustainability of it. I mean, your surcharge is only for 1 year. The spectrum, once it's disinvested, it's not going to be repeated.
Once growth picks up, that will give revenues. What happened between 2004 and 2008? Money was pouring out of our ears and nose and eyes. We had so much money and we gave so much money to the states. All the states, barring 1 or 2, became revenue surplus. Therefore, when growth picks up, revenues pick up. I've seen it happen between 2004 and 2008. So I'm banking on growth crossing the 6% hurdle in 2013-14 and growth crossing the 7% hurdle in 2014-15.
Okay, I just said that, really the big bonanza came when you crossed 8% and then you crossed 9%, and that is when the bonanza came. 6% you were doing through most of the 1990s. Frankly, that didn't bring you any bonanza.
Relatively, it will bring more revenues. Relative to the previous year, it will bring you more revenues. Yes.
I have a question on the FDI and FII simplification that you've given. It's welcome, the new definition. But what happens to companies where there are sectoral caps? Because some of the companies reacted very sharply in trade because there are sectoral caps, and with that definition, FII actually becomes FDI component.
No, you should read that paragraph carefully. I said, as a broad principle, we are laying down investment stake below 10% will be regarded as FII, and anything above 10% will be regarded as FDI. And I added, the application of this principle will be examined by a committee. I realize that it has to be more granular exercises to be done sectorally, and then we'll have to examine whether the 10% applies to voting power or does it apply to actual shareholding. These are things which have to be examined. But I think it's good to send a signal to the world that we are following international practice. And the international practice is clear. Anything below 10% is regarded as FII, and anything above 10% is regarded as FDI. That's a broad principle. When we apply it to different sectors, there will be some variation.
You've always been a strong advocate of buoyant capital markets, economic buoyancy. Most market participants believe the budget has addressed a lot of their concerns. There's an SPG cut, RGESF has been made more inclusive, but they perhaps expect more aggressive things to happen in capital markets. Are their expectations misplaced, or will we see a lot happen outside of the budget?
See, none of you has really read carefully the portions on capital markets, on insurance, on banking. Those are not quote-unquote sexy items for television channels. But you read it carefully. Every single bullet under those paragraphs has taken us weeks of discussion with the regulator, with the industry, with other stakeholders and then drafting. Every one of them is an important decision. Every one of them has many beneficial consequences. When all these decisions are implemented, as they will be from today, SEBI will make whatever rules, regulations it has to make. IRDA will issue the rules and guidelines that it has to do. RBI will issue the circulars and guidelines. You will find that this budget has done more for the financial market than any recent budget.
Sure enough, but I have a question there, and which is why it just follows from what you just said. The fact is that many people were watching this budget. Investors, India Inc., the arm army, so to say, they wanted to know what you would do with them. It's the ratings agencies that were really playing havoc. They kept saying, we are watching the budget and we will decide thereafter. As far as your fiscal consolidation map is concerned, and like you said, you've looked at these numbers for the last 2 months and you're obviously in a position to defend it. Don't you think then there is a case for assessments higher than what they have done for India? Because they've been consequently silent in the last 24 hours, other than I think barring S&P, which just said that nothing really changes.
No. I read that S&P and Fitch have made statements welcoming the budget. You see, I respect the view of a rating agency. But I don't make a budget for the rating agency. I make a budget for the people of India. They may rate us high or low, but I think all that we are doing certainly should disabuse anyone that India is a candidate for down-rating or downgrading.
Are we a candidate for an upgrade?
Well, it really matters not to me whether we are upgraded or not. If they are looking for candidates for downgrading, I can suggest several other countries.
But let's come to the budget is supposed to be for the people. It's not only for the arm army, it's now for the arm voter, because there's the election coming. I mean, this is an election budget. As you said, this is not an election just for Standard and Poor. Historically, there has been an attempt to have a large number of populist giveaways in the belief that you can buy votes, you can buy an election. On the last occasion, the farm loan waiver, Narega, these were seen, Chidambaram has bought Congress electoral victory. There is no such attempt at all this time. The contrast couldn't be greater. Do you believe that the new emphasis that you have on growth and inflation is as much of a vote winner as the farm loan waiver or Narega last time?
You see, I don't think Narega or the farm loan waiver were done in order to, quote-unquote, buy votes. Narega was necessary to banish hunger poverty. The farm loan waiver was necessary because we had a spate of farmer suicides, farmers who had been indebted. Now you don't have so many suicides among farmers who are indebted. There are suicides for other reasons. And in order to restore the health of the farm sector, we had to do that waiver. Now, frankly, we got more votes in urban India last time than in rural India. So, this argument that we bought votes of rural India is belied by the result of the election. I think people are wiser than we are willing to attribute to them. People understand what is good for them in the long run. In the long run, what is good for people is that India's economy continues to grow at a clipping pace, 8% and above. That itself brings a host of benefits to the people. It brings better roads, it brings better schools, brings more money to their communities, it brings more jobs. Growth itself is an elixir. Growth is a panacea for many ills in society. Not entirely, but many. So growth itself will give us the lift that we require to win an election. And I think we are in a situation today where we have to embrace growth unhesitatingly. That is why in the opening paragraph of my speech I said we must unhesitatingly embrace growth, because without growth there will be neither inclusiveness nor development. I think the people know who can bring them long-term growth, but with a caution that the moral reason for growth is always kept in mind. The growth is good, growth is necessary, growth is an imperative, but growth must lead to equity.
I of your points to people buying the argument for growth and how it is going to bring them equitable growth, so to say. The question that I want to ask you is, have you been able to convince your party, because you seem to have, that good economics is after all good politics? This wasn't the case 2 years back. There are so many reforms that you've been able to push through that one never thought Congress would bite the bullet on.
Obviously, also diesel price. I mean, we've been breaking our heads for years saying, why don't you have small increases in diesel price over several months? It could have been done years ago. Why did it have to wait till now?
I don't know of anyone who said small increases. I thought that was our own idea. Everyone said diesel prices should be corrected. Free diesel prices. Nobody said make small increases. So I claim...
Ram Nayak made small increases so many times when he was petroleum minister.
Ram Nayak did not make small increases. He made infinitesimal adjustments. That's not really increases. He was raising it by 5 paise and then reducing it by 5 paise. But then Ram Nayak didn't have that problem either, because crude oil prices did not cross $37 a barrel. But I'm dealing with $110 to $115 a barrel. So I think the Congress party stands by reforms and supports the government when it carries out reforms. But the Congress party is also the conscience keeper of the party rank and file. It's also the conscience keeper of the poor of this country. So the Congress party must constantly remind the government, in your zeal for reforms, please don't forget who these reforms are for. The object of the reform is to bring about equitable, fair, just development. And I think that's a perfectly valid voice of the conscience which government must heed.
Sure enough. How easy or difficult was it to not give in to the expectations of politicians? Politicians would want a flashy, populist scheme, something that would make headlines.
To supplement that, can you please tell us which were the populist schemes that others suggested to you that you shot down?
I mean, actually, they may have entertained some ideas before August 1, but after I took over on August 1 and made that statement on 6th of August, and then at every opportunity explained that the economy is really challenged now, no one has really suggested a major, quote-unquote, populist scheme. Yes, one or two people suggested that we should do another loan waiver, but that was a very feeble voice. I think most people understood that what will bring them rewards is sustained growth. And they understood that there is a new middle class, this is educated, this knows what's happening in the world, this will question everything that we do. And therefore we must recognize that we can't get away with window-dressed schemes. We need sustained, solid growth.
The new middle class is also anxious and agitated, but I want to take the attention away from what has really happened.
They are anxious and agitated about what?
You see how agitated the common man on the road is. I mean, of course, over the last
After the budget?
Not after the budget, I'm saying in general. But just to take the attention away from the budget, the three big things that you're going to perhaps look at is the GST, the insurance and pension, and the food security bill. Just to begin with the GST, you've tried to win the states over. I mean, Swami and I are having this discussion. I think you've had a very pragmatic approach. You've made an allocation in the budget itself. How confident are you that this ambitious tax reform will actually see the light of day? We've been going back and forth.
I've read Mr. Sushil Modi's statement this morning. That's a very positive statement. He has welcomed the paragraph in the budget speech, and he said that the trust deficit has narrowed considerably, and he hopes to take it forward. You see, he has to deal with the state finance ministers. And without naming anyone, I think he has got two problems there. And they belong to his party. So he has to convince his party to prevail upon the state finance ministers to support him on the GST. I respect Mr. Modi. I think his commitment to the GST is unquestionable. And with him steering the state finance ministers group and me in this chair, I hope that we can conclude our discussions on GST, say by May or June.
Just on the insurance and pension bill, your own suggestion is that it should go up to 49%. The opposition does not want that to happen. They've said they will let it pass only if you curtail it to 26%. If we were to see that reform through, do we believe that the government would blink on this and go with what the opposition wants?
I don't think it's a question of one or the other blinking. I have had 2 rounds of discussion with the leaders of the opposition. I've spoken to Mr. Yashwant Sinha, and I was told that there will be another meeting when the principal opposition party will tell us what are the options that we could consider. I think they are also reflecting. I think they have also had some discussions with the insurance industry, and they are reflecting on the position they should take. So I think what you say may be an old position. Therefore, I've left the bill as it is. I've not made any new suggestion, but I think there will be some options we can consider.
And those options could even be as high as 49%?
Well, I don't know. Let's wait to see the options.
Just on the food security bill, it's supposed to be this big UPA political bet. It's supposed to be a good thing. Most observers believe, Sonia believes it's very affordable. You've just budgeted 10,000 crores over and above the PDS. But the principal opposition doesn't also seem to have made up its mind on that. You actually hear very conflicting voices. Mr. Yashwant Sinha, in a course for discussion with us, said it's not affordable. We cannot go ahead with this. Leaders within his party speak a different language. How confident are you of actually seeing this through?
When I read that paragraph, I noticed that several opposition members, including BJP members, were applauding. So why should I not believe that eventually the bill will be supported? I think the bill will be supported because the report of the Standing Committee is in favor of passing a bill.
The direct benefits transfer. I mean, some time ago when it was announced, people said this is the game changer, this is the election winner. There was a feeling that this budget speech would come out with a huge amount of both further detail and substantial rhetoric. You most certainly mentioned it, but it didn't come out as the kind of thing that would be the game changer. So do you just see it as something that's quite useful but not a game changer?
No, it is a game changer. All the rhetoric that was necessary to make it known to the people was done when we announced the scheme. There's no need to repeat that rhetoric again.
Okay.
Therefore, it is a game changer. But as I said on day one, it requires a lot of hard work. And I explained in the media conference yesterday, it requires erection of 3 pillars. The 3 pillars are not being erected at the same pace. So the one is lagging behind the other. But the pillars will be erected, and by the time the term of the government comes to an end, you will find that DBT has been rolled throughout India. Please remember, the DBT beneficiaries are not those who appear on your channels for your discussions. The DBT beneficiaries are outside. I know them. I've seen them. I've touched them. They know what the DBT means. It's only an old woman who does not get her pension every month from the Tahsildar or the revenue inspector knows the meaning of DBT.
Or has to sell out a part of it.
It's a student who doesn't know whether the scholarship has reached his college or not, who knows the benefit of DBT. We are reaching out to them. And once the DBT is rolled out, you will find that it is a game changer.
See, even game-changing things, as you said, the automobile was a game changer, but there were glitches for 20 years until they sorted them out and then the automobile became a success. So the question right now is, some people say that if you just roll out DBT in a limited number of districts with good infrastructure, it will be a success, it will get a good name. If you are over-ambitious and you try to cover the whole country, even if there's 80% success and 20% glitches and failure, that 20%, all the stories and bad publicity, are going to drown out the 80%. So why are you in a hurry to cover the whole country?
We are not in a hurry.
You said it's going to reach the whole country, although apparently half the country is still unbanked. Broadband has not got to all the villages.
Please understand. I was looking at the numbers today. The banking correspondents, business correspondents, have this year transacted business worth 16,000 crores. You're underestimating the reach of the business correspondent or banking correspondent. There are over, I think, 1.5 lakh banking correspondents. They have transacted, the transaction value is about 16,000 crores. Therefore, I think once this is rolled out, the system is in place to take care of the needs of the beneficiaries. But we are doing it cautiously. I have suggested to the Prime Minister that we should strengthen the rollout machinery. We are looking at it. And I think the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister is holding periodic meetings. But we will strengthen the rollout machinery and see that it's rolled out according to the timetable that I've laid out.
Very good. And since it is an election year, there were people, I would say, by the middle of 2012 were saying Congress will find it difficult to get even 100 seats in the next election. As a result of the budget and the reforms, what is your figure? How many seats in 2014?
You can't put a number on the figure, but all I can say is, come elections, people know what's good for them for the long term. Despite some warts, despite some blemishes, they know that not only for material benefits, not only for economic growth, there are other considerations. The voter does not vote only on one issue. The voter votes on a multiplicity of issues. The voter will come to the conclusion that between the rival formations, or maybe a third formation or a fourth formation, the Congress-led formation is a safe bet for him and his children, for her and her family.
I like the free part of the budget, and I really applaud you for it. There were too many references made to see, which is a very good thing. I have a last question for you. You came in on the 1st of August. The economy was in doldrums. I think trust deficit was only widening between government and industry. The fisc was in a mess. You've tried to sort out stuff. I think you've been able to rein in the deficit of 5.2, which is a huge thumbs up from most stakeholders. The question that I want to ask you is, 24 hours later, after you presented your 8th budget, did you have a peaceful night of sleep?
I slept peacefully over the last 2 months. I didn't miss a night's sleep. You see,
is it a job as you thought you would do it done?
Well, this was a very challenged economy. Therefore, one had to tread very carefully. But putting together the numbers was not very difficult. I've done it before, and therefore I'm familiar with the way the numbers are put together. Putting together the numbers was not difficult. It's just that not doing anything wrong, not trying to be flashy or exaggerate what we can do, just doing the right things, just doing the basic things that have to be done to restart the growth engine. First, we have to ensure that the rail does not derail. The train remains on the track. We have to restart the growth engine. All the guys and the men and women who appear on your channels and speak eloquently must now go back and open their purses and begin to invest. It's not enough to exhort the government, not enough to lecture to the government. Ultimately, they have to open their purses and begin to invest. Public sector, private sector must invest. Once they begin to invest, you will see that the train begins to move. I think what this budget has done is restart the growth engine which had got stalled.
Was it the toughest budget you've produced of the 8?
In terms of putting together the numbers, it was
in terms of
not
the challenges you had before you.
In terms of the environment, yes, because the economy is quite challenged. The environment is challenged, and one had to find his way very carefully.
We wish you all the very best for the future. Thank you very much for this interaction.